Since the attack on October 7th, social media has been flooded with gruesome images of unparalleled brutality. These images are continuously circulating on social networks, leaving none of us indifferent. But what is the impact of consuming violent images on our mental health? Let's discuss this with our science editor, Julia Seeger, who's joined me on set. Julia, thank you so much for talking about this very important topic. I think a lot of us, especially when we're on Twitter, not that everybody is on Twitter, but those of us who are,
right.
We're confronted with these images all the time. I mean, what does that do to us?
Well, it's true that, especially on X, now it's called X,
yes,
right?
X.
It's called X, but European regulators, too, have voiced their concern, and they say that X and other platforms have failed to take down many of deceptive videos, but also violent videos, indeed. So you have Elon Musk on Twitter saying that he believes that internet users should be the ones to decide what's to be censored, and Thierry Breton answering, saying that he considered that what we're seeing today on X actually constitutes a glorification of violence. And it's true that during this conflict, we've seen a lot of graphic and violent videos, but I think what makes a difference compared to other conflicts is the amount of videos that have been shared. And the question, indeed, that we want to raise today is what kind of impact that can have on mental health on those watching those videos. And historically, scientists actually believe that it was only people who were on the ground, like soldiers, that could develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so what it is it's when it can be manifested by feeling distressed or in constant state of alertness or even reliving a traumatic situation in dreams and flashbacks. But what scientists from Bradford University have demonstrated is that now this syndrome is actually much more prevalent in the general population. So what they did is that they exposed 189 people to violent content, to content from the Twin Towers, from people trying to escape flames, from suicide attacks, and they discovered that nearly a quarter of them had developed some of the symptoms of PTSD. Now, in that case, when you develop this anxiety just linked to watching videos, it's actually called vicarious trauma.
Right, because you're not living it firsthand.
Exactly.
And yet you're still watching it.
And you're still
close,
developing
and you're still
some
developing.
of those symptoms. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it actually stays in time as well. So it's something that sticks with you.
It's not like
well.
Just on the moment.
No.
It's also something that continues. Now, the fact that we're in an era of constant, I mean, we record everything on our phones.
Exactly.
We're always, we're in a world of this constant imaging all the time. It's like we can't even escape it.
Right. We don't even read that much anymore. We're binge watching so many videos. And I think it's important to understand that an image is much more terrifying than text. And the reason why is that an image is going to directly go to the brain and it multiplies the terror factor. Now, the problem with social media networks specifically is that you have fewer filters. They're going to be looped. And one of the problems is that you have to understand that any image of extreme violence can actually generate a traumatic reaction that is then recorded in the brain. So that means that it's kind of like playing the Russian roulette. You're watching a video and you just don't know which instant can actually create that in your brain. And the more sensitive you are, the more deeply it's going to be lodged in your brain. Furthermore, what then happens is the videos are then shared, right? And they're shared without context. And that's something the brain doesn't know how to deal with. So it's watching this violence, it just doesn't understand what is happening. And so that's going to actually destabilize the brain. It's going to almost numb the brain, and so that's going to actually make you shift into your emotions.
Mm-hmm. This is all very scary stuff because this is stuff that we deal with.
How it actually works inside your brain, and I think it's important to understand why videos are being used to manipulate people. Because if it does numb your brain, then.
And these are fully formed adult brains.
Exactly.
That we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're not even talking about younger brains or that are not.
And we could talk about
completely
younger brains because I think some adolescents, teenagers today are watching some of this footage, and it's important to stay close to them and to actually continue talking to them about what they're seeing.
Well, are these youngsters, for example, or even adults, I mean, does this mean that violence, has kind of lost its value in the sense of like we're just getting used to it all the time? I mean,
we're getting used to it, but I think it's also important to say that the human body, we're drawn to violence naturally, and one of the reasons why is that when you see a how would you say this? A terrifying act. What happens is your body is going to release adrenaline that's going to lead to heightened sensations, a surge of energy. Another reason we tend to click on those videos too, so this is almost like a psychological trigger, right? But it's because we're trying to understand what is happening. And you have to say that you will never understand this type of violence in those videos. It just doesn't come, once again, with context and explanation. So I think that also leads to the fact that we should question the effectiveness of, for instance, violent content warnings that we're seeing on those videos.
Right. So that's one of the possible solutions. I mean, what can we do to protect ourselves if that's what we want, or to protect people around us?
I don't know how effective those warnings are because, as I said, we're drawn to violence naturally. But I think that everyone should take action personally. So it's just simple things, but you have to set boundaries. You can't binge watch those videos. You have to understand that you can't take all of the stress of the world on your shoulders. You have to maybe avoid that collective phenomenon of constantly sharing. And there's also more concrete things that you can do, like on social media networks. You can deactivate the automatic video players, so that will avoid the element of surprise. So sometimes
because you're watching one thing, and then all of a
Exactly,
sudden
and
it goes to something else that has nothing to do with
and you
anything.
didn't even click.
And you
That's
didn't
the
even
problem.
click. Right, exactly.
So
It's just
kind
prompted
of
to you.
appears on your screen, right?
The algorithm, as
Right.
we say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very, very scary stuff. Thank you so much for that warning. Very apt warning. Thank you so much, Julia Seeger, for joining us there.